Honda's Insight wants to change the way we drive. A more efficient approach to the business of getting from A to B will, after all, have as much impact on the planet as the hybrid technology that this practical 5-seater car brings to families looking for an affordable, eco-friendly package. Let's check it out. Despite spiralling fuel costs and wilting polar bears, it's taken the motor industry a good few years to dispense with the good old-fashioned internal combustion engine. For years, the industry dabbled with electric power before finally accepting it was no use except for urban vehicles or those being used for very relatively short distances. Even now that a proper internal combustion engine replacement, that's hydrogen fuel cell technology, even now that that's been found, we've still to wait a good 5 years for it to really come to market. In the meantime, and probably for a good few years after we're driving hydrogen fuel cell vehicles around, there are hybrid cars like this Honda Insight that offer petrol engines to give us response and range when we need it, allied to battery power that cuts in to help us when we don't, aiding fuel economy and emissions. Listen to hybrid lovers and you'd think that theirs was the answer to all the world's motoring ills, rather than stepping stone technology there to make us feel better about polluting the planet, while a better solution is perfected in cars like Honda's hydrogen-powered US market FCX Clarity. Still, even if hybrids aren't the solution, they're a solution, and welcome enough for that. Modern diesels can maybe match or even slightly better a hybrid's emissions or fuel consumption figures, but diesel's many downsides outweigh many of its apparent advantages. Modern diesels do, after all, cost more to fuel, cost more to tax, and potentially cost more to go into congestion zones. Plus, they'll cost more to maintain, with problems like, for example, particulate filters that clog up after continued urban use. In contrast, hybrid engines are surprisingly simple, which is why there have been no significant problems with the hundreds of thousands of them that are already on the roads. Now, if you discount the intriguing serial hybrid approach that's favoured by GM's clever Volt concept car, here you've got a car that can generate its own electricity rather than relying on banks of batteries. Other than that, there are basically two kinds of hybrid. Toyota's Prius, really the first car that springs to mind in the hybrid context, features a more sophisticated power split approach in which electronic banks of batteries can work independently from the engine as well as in tandem with it. The other approach is basically that of the parallel hybrid, and it's a much simpler approach favoured by the car we're looking at here, Honda's Insight, in which the engine and the batteries are always working together. Unlike other hybrids which move away from rest with eerie quietness on solely electric power, this Honda uses its own internal combustion engine from the beginning, so sounds and feels quite conventional. Its every purpose seems to be designed around the driver who, under normal circumstances, wants to get from A to B as efficiently rather than as quickly as possible. Mind you, you could argue that with only an 87 brake horsepower 1.3 litre petrol engine to draw upon, that this car could hardly be anything but. Just as well then that this power plant is assisted by a 14 brake horsepower electric motor, with power that comes from a bank of nickel hydride batteries under the boot floor. Now these are recharged by energy reclaimed from the rear wheels under coasting or braking. As a result, if you really want it to, this car can pick up its skirts and go reasonably quickly, rest to 60 in 12.5 seconds on the way to a top speed of 113 miles an hour. Drive frequently in that fashion rather than only if you're really late, and this car's eco-friendly driving systems will frown severely on you. And just how will they do that? Well, let's start with the ambient meter. Drive in a relaxed fashion, and the colour display behind the digital speedo at the top of the dash here displays in a calming green light. Get a bit more enthusiastic and it goes through turquoise to eventually dark blue if you're really getting carried away. There's also a display in the centre of the dash in the middle here that shows whether you're drawing from the battery or from the engine, or a mixture of both. And there's an economy meter that shows you the level of economy achieved in the last 3 drives, so you can berate lead-footed family members for their prowess at the wheel. Plus there's an Econ feature that you activate via the button over here that smooths out acceleration surges caused by an over-enthusiastic throttle foot, at the same time as changing the activation of the idle stop-start system that turns the engine on and off to save you fuel at traffic lights. It also tones down the air conditioning slightly and optimises the throttle and the CVT gearbox. To be honest, I'm not quite sure why a typical Insight buyer would ever turn it off. If you're feeling especially sanctimonious, you can switch the central display to Eco Guide. Here the system displays you with 5 tree trunks, and as you drive, leaves are added or deleted to the trunks, Tamagotchi style, depending on your eco-friendly approach to driving. Results are awarded not only based on the journey that you're on, but on your cumulative use of the car. Now below the trunks, you've got some flagged areas to the left and the right of hatching, and there's a little flag in the middle that extends either to the left for braking or to the right for acceleration. Now to drive economically, you've got to keep the flag out of the extreme left braking or the extreme right acceleration areas. As with all the latest enviro-friendly cars, there's the kind of stop-start system that I mentioned earlier that kills the engine when you're at traffic lights or in urban traffic to save fuel, although you have to keep your foot on the brake pedal for it to work. Otherwise, there's not too much to report unless you object to the split rear screen that has a 3-inch bar across the middle of it and can obscure low-slung following cars from your view. Of course, road-going dynamics aren't cutting edge. It would be pretty pointless if they were, the way that this car encourages you to drive. Thrash the thing around and you notice this. Drive sedately and you don't. As with other hybrids, there's an automatic-only engine choice. This one is a 7-speed unit. The success of Toyota's Prius hybrid has been deeply aggravating for the innovative engineers at Honda. They, of course, were first to market with hybrid technology in 1999 with the first generation Insight, but dropped the ball by building it into a curious-looking, ugly and impractical little car that ensured that no one gave hybrid technology the time of day until Toyota turned up with it a year later, built into a practical 4-door family saloon. With this second generation Insight, Honda have ensured against making the same mistake twice, building it into a practical 5-door Prius-like body shape. True, at 5'7" with the mirrors electrically folded, the Insight is a little narrower than the class norm. But the only time you really notice that is when appreciating that it's slightly easier than usual to park in the typical modern garage. At the wheel, everything falls to hand easily, but the hard, unyielding plastics used around the cabin aren't up to the standards of some rivals. In the back, there's reasonable room for 3, as long as nobody's over 6 foot tall, and head and legroom in all areas is quite acceptable for this class of car. Now, most hybrids suffer terribly with regard to boot space. Those hefty battery packs have got to sit somewhere after all. But with this one, Honda has been rather clever. They've managed to fit their intelligent power unit, that includes a power control unit, a cooling system, an electric motor and a battery pack, within the U part of the trailing arm twist beam rear suspension. And that means that in the luggage bay at least, you get the kind of luggage capacity that you'd expect from a car of this size and price, about 350 litres with all the passengers in place. And it's a figure you can boost to 408 litres if you do without the optional space saver rear tyre and wheel, and you're able to access this handy under boot floor compartment here. So the same or even a bit more than you get in a Focus or an Astra with all the seats in place. A Prius can match this too, but it can't rival the 584 litres of space you can get in an Insight by pushing forward these 60-40 split folding rear seats. Mind you, that's still way off what you get in an ordinary family hatch with all the seats folded down, a legacy of what is a very shallow loading area. Now, list prices suggest that you'll pay somewhere between £16,000 and £19,000 for your Insight, which makes it easily the cheapest hybrid on the market. Only one automatic model is offered with a variety of trim variants. Now, if you're making sticker price comparisons, you're looking at a saving of up to £2,500 over Toyota's Prius, the most obvious rival. If you're not hung up on hybrid motoring, but want to make significant savings in a family hatchback size package, then you could try one of the eco-centered diesel alternatives, cars like Ford's Focus Econectic, Volkswagen's Golf Blue Motion, or Volvo's S40 or V50 drive models. Now, no alternative betters this Honda's equipment tally, with things like climate-controlled air conditioning, 4 electric windows, electric mirrors, a CD stereo, alloy wheels, and VSA stability control, which you've got a button to turn off, though why a potential Insight customer would ever want to do that is quite beyond me. Now, the upshot of all this technology and environmental prompting is that your Insight can return up to 64.2 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. Much of that is down to the very clever VCM variable cylinder management system that closes down the cylinders under deceleration. Now, before you point out that some diesels can do better, remember that diesels run on pricier fuel and also open up a whole other can of worms due to their high nitrous oxide emissions and particulate matter. In any case, Honda reckons that the Insight will be cheaper and easier to maintain than a diesel over its lifespan, and backs this up with a 3-year 90,000 mile warranty, a 10-year anti-perforation warranty, and an 8-year 100,000 mile powertrain warranty. Insurance is Group 6. CO2 emissions are 101 grams per kilometre of CO2, unfortunately just over the point where owners would be exempt from vehicle excise duty. Still, company car taxes will be low, and it'll be free for you to drive into the London congestion zone. If hybrid motoring is going to become commonplace and therefore achieve its eco-friendly goals, then it must become more affordable. Sure, Honda's technology might not be as cutting edge as that of, say, Toyota, but by and large the differences are really things that buyers won't care about as much as the Insight's more affordable pricing. If you'd like to save money but wouldn't mind saving the planet at the same time, then here's a good place to start.